Hello, and welcome to Lecture 3, where we're going to be talking about markets and industries. In our journey through startups in the medical sciences, let's first distinguish between a market and an industry. A market encompasses potential customers or clients for a specific product or service, while an industry comprises companies producing similar goods and services. Now, this distinction is fundamental for startups. Understanding this helps identify the target audience and competitive landscape, allowing startups to strategize more effectively. Now, as an example, consider the pharmaceutical industry. Now, this industry has numerous companies manufacturing drugs. And within this industry, the market for a specific drug, such as a new cancer treatment, represents the potential customers who need that particular product. Startups need to differentiate between the broader industry and the specific markets they aim to serve. Now, remember, when thinking of competition, you're definitely going to be in direct competition if two companies are producing the same product and offering it to the same customers. However, remember, within the industry, you can have competition with other companies that are in the same space. So you're thinking, well, does that really matter? Because they're not producing the same products. Well, it does kind of matter still because of the branding and of the recognition or the reputation of companies. So let's say you enter the market for a small product that is new to consumers, but you're new to the industry. Well, they're going to be hesitant to consider your product as reliable and valid and all that fun stuff. But now compare this to a well-established company in the industry that comes out with the same product. People will immediately identify with that company, let's say Johnson and Johnson, and they say, "Oh, wow, look at that! There's another Johnson and Johnson product." So then Johnson and Johnson represents a bigger player, a more branded player within the industry. So you need to be aware of that as a startup because that's what you're aiming for is for that branding and recognition within the industry. And so you're going to compete at that level as well as at the product level. So let's dig in a little bit more on who's your client. So identifying potential clients, of course, is crucial for medical science startups. These clients or customers span healthcare providers, patients, research institutions, hospitals, government entities, privatized companies, etc. Now, for instance, healthcare providers influence drug and device usage, while research institutions require specific tools and software in order to do their research in the medical sciences. Now, recognizing this diverse client base assists startups in tailoring their products and strategies to meet specific needs and preferences. And this is where you're going to want to spend time thinking, once again, of your value proposition, but how that can change depending on who the client or customer is. And the other interesting and important aspect is don't pigeonhole yourself. That expression means don't just fit yourself into one slot. And think of other ways that your product can be used or be of interest to other client or customer bases. That is how you can make better use of your time and your marketing and your sales in order to sell the same product. Because if you propose it for different uses or for different applications, if you wish, within different client segments or customer segments within your market, then you start to expand your market, which is important. For example, in a medical imaging industry, if you have a startup, the clients can include hospitals who are looking for advanced imaging solutions to satisfy their radiologists. The research institutions can be looking for cutting edge technology for their studies, for doing research, and even individual patients will benefit from improved diagnostics. So, understanding the diverse client base helps the startup customize its offerings and maximize its time and effort when entering the market. Let's talk a little bit about market analysis, which is pivotal in comprehending customer behavior, devising pricing strategies, and targeting customers effectively. In the medical sciences, customers may include, of course, healthcare providers, patients, research institutions. So, this analysis is pivotal for startups positioning their products effectively within the market landscape. So, as an example, a pharmaceutical startup conducting market analysis might study the behavior of healthcare providers when adopting new medications, analyze patient preferences for drug delivery methods, and research how research institutions choose collaborations with drug developers. Now, this analysis guides their strategies and product development for entering or staying in market. So, how do we get started on this market analysis? Imagine a novel AI strategy for tumor detection. To conduct market analysis, consider the questions about potential buyers. Who's going to buy your product? Are there any competitors that we should be worried about already in market or coming to market at the same time? What are the application areas? Where can we see the product being used? Right? And finally, what are our pricing strategies? So basically, how much can we charge for this and people are willing to pay? Now, these questions are fundamental in gaining insights and identifying opportunities, and finally making the informed decisions that the startup, your startup, will need to do in order to enter a market or stay within the market. So let's go back to our example with the AI-based tumor detection software. So once again, we ask the question, who are our potential buyers of our software? Is it radiologists? Is it hospitals? Who? What are the competing technologies in this space? Are there other ways that these tumors can be detected? In which medical applications can our AI be most beneficial? So where's this software going to live? Is it going to be a standalone application? Is it going to be incorporated into a PACS? How is it going to be used? What pricing strategies align with the value we're offering? So that's always a tricky one in the sense that who's going to be buying it? So what kind of money do they have at their available to them in order to make decisions? And what price are you going to set it at so that you can make a profit, which, don't forget, is the primary goal of any for-profit company, corporation, is to provide profit to its shareholders. So you want to price it in such a way that, of course, you're going to be able to maximize your profit, but also, enter the market successfully in the sense that you don't limit yourself to the number of people who see value in the price point that you've decided on. That's a tricky bit. If you make your price too low, then a lot of people are going to see value in that. They're going to say, wow, that's a fantastic software for so little money. I am definitely going to buy that. But then, of course, your profit margin shrinks. And so then we go back to that value proposition. Where and how can we produce a value that's going to be, enticing for customers or clients, but still provide you with enough profit in order to run your company, scale your company, and then finally give back to the shareholders in terms of profit. Let's put some labels onto our market analysis questions. So who will buy our product is customer identification. Any competitors that we may have will come under market share. So who are we sharing the market with? Where can we see the product being used as market trends? And how would we charge for this will be our price points. Back to our AI tumor detection software example, understanding that the market share for radiology AI software is growing due to the increasing demand for faster and more accurate diagnosis is going to be very important. Additionally, knowing the demographics of hospitals and clinics that are early adopters of AI technology can help your startup target the right customers at the right time. Now, a systematic approach to market analysis would involve understanding the purpose, researching the industry or that industry that you're going to be in, identifying target customers, comprehending the competition or identifying and then understanding, comprehending the competition, gathering and then analyzing the data, and finally, forming an internal strategy. Now, this process aids startups in shaping their business strategies and making informed decisions about their market that they're going to enter or stay in. Now, a startup aimed to develop a new drug for a rare disease, for example, would follow these steps by first understanding the purpose. So, are they addressing an unmet medical need? Researching the pharmaceutical industry. So, who's in it? Is anybody else making something similar or the same? Identifying the patients and healthcare providers who will be their target customers, analyzing existing competitors and their drugs, which you would have hopefully come across during your research of the pharmaceutical industry, gathering clinical trial data, very important for the validation, especially when you have to go through regulatory, and forming a strategy for Health Canada or FDA approval for market entry is going to be essentially what your startup is going to do. Another important piece of the market puzzle is market size. Estimating market volume or value, especially in the medical sciences, can be challenging. Employing a top-down or bottom-up approach helps startups gauge market potential and attractiveness for their medical devices or drugs. And understanding market size aids in assessing investment viability. So the top-down approach is when you start with a large demographic, so let's say everybody in Canada, and then you narrow it down to your target market. So who would actually use or value your product? The bottom-up approach is where you start with a very small sample where you are certain that they are the absolute perfect candidates. And then you start extrapolating to the larger market. Who else would be interested in your product? How else could your product be, used by a slightly different demographic? That would be the bottom-up approach. Both approaches are good approaches. People have their preferences, and frankly, I always do both, just to be sure. Now that we have our market and we appreciate its size, let's look into its composition. So segmenting markets based on demographics, psychographics, geography, behavior. This enables startups to target specific groups more effectively. And this tailored approach enhances customer engagement and satisfaction as products and services align with specific segment needs. So, for example, a medical device startup might segment the market by focusing on specific demographics, such as pediatric hospitals that require specialized equipment for children. By tailoring their product and marketing efforts to this specific segment, they can better meet the unique needs of the pediatric healthcare system. Now, remember, you don't have to be in only one segment. You can actually target multiple segments, and this would come under your internal strategy. So deciding on what to do in what segment can be part of the strategy. So another consideration is the possibility of your market growing, so meaning expanding your market. The market can change and can grow. It can also get smaller, of course, but let's think about the positive. So this is called your market growth potential. And understanding the ability of a market to evolve over time is crucial. Factors like market trends, innovation with disruptive technologies like AI, regulatory dynamics, as well as something called the compound annual growth rate, and we'll talk about that in a second, all influence market growth. So this comprehension enables startups to align their strategies with future needs. So the compound annual growth rate is something that's used to estimate the growth of an investment or a company, and it is used to forecast the growth of a market. So it's essentially a ratio between your on your numerator is your final value and over your beginning value over time, so time in years. And the difference, for instance, between a compound annual growth rate and that of a simple growth rate, so how your investment or your company is growing year over year, is that the compound annual growth rate assumes that the growth rate was repeated or compounded each year, whereas a traditional growth rate does not. And, this is preferable because it smooths out the more volatile nature of a year by year growth rate. So an example of how you would use this is you would do some forecasting where you would estimate that you're going to grow by a certain percentage in so many years. Then you would calculate the compound annual growth rate, and that would give you the year over year increase or growth of your company, your investment that you would expect. And what that would do is enable you to say, oh yeah, I can handle that in terms of scaling, in terms of a company. For each year I have to increase by so much. And in order to do that, I have to sell so much. I have to, get into my market, enter my market more, or penetrate, what they say, penetrate this much per year. And it allows you to say, oh, okay, with, a growth of so much over this many years, let's say 10 years, this is what I have to achieve every year. And it allows you to strategize and to plan. That's kind of its purpose. And then you can obviously use different percentages and just see how it differs and how much per year and what's feasible and what's not feasible. Okay, let's put it all together. Let's estimate the market size and growth. So estimating market size would involve considering the number of target users and expected purchases within a specific period, let's say per year. However, in the dynamic fields like AI in healthcare or other medical sciences, traditional formulas might not fully capture the complexities. So this simple formula that the market size is equal to the number of target users times the purchases expected in the given period may not be sufficient. So startups have to adapt and innovate in their market analysis approaches. So let's say, for example, a startup developing AI-powered telemedicine software, for example, estimating the market size involves considering the number of potential users, of course, but in this case, both healthcare providers and patients, and their expected adoption rates. So that's going to impact the size because not only do you have a pool of users that you can, cater to, but you also have to estimate, how quickly or how successful the adoption rate is going to be. But additionally, startups will also need to account for factors like changing healthcare policies and technological advancements, and because these both can influence your market dynamics, immensely, especially when it comes to policies. Because let's say you had a policy that said, "Whoop, no more telemedicine." Well, your market is not only shrunken, it's non-existent. On the other hand, you may have policies that will encourage telemedicine, and therefore adoption rates will go up. Technological advancements, I'm going to hope that you don't go backwards, but you can go forwards in the sense that technological advancements can actually improve adoption. And that's something that you would want to factor in when you're estimating your market size and growth. Let's talk a little bit about market structure. So understanding market share and market penetration is important. And this is what makes up your market structure. So market share represents a company's total sales compared to the industry's total sales. So let's say a company sells 25% of total sales in that industry, whereas market penetration is the total number of sales to your target customer within all possible customers within that market. And so what's the big difference? Well, the big difference is you may sell 25% of all sales in the market, but only 10% of customers in the market buy this product. So the penetration is not deep. It's only 10% of all people in your market who are eligible to buy your product buy your product. And so this is where you can identify that, yes, you're competing very well with your competitors because you own 25% of the market. However, you and everybody else is not penetrating the market very well because you're only getting down to 10% and you'd like to get up to, let's say, 90%, right? Because that increases your market size like considerably. So an example, for instance, would be in the pharmaceutical industry. Your startup may analyze the market share by comparing the number of sales of a specific drug to the total sales of the drug in that category. There's your market share. But then, on the other hand, they may involve assessing the percentage of hospitals or clinics using their drug compared to the total number of facilities in their target market. So there's an example. A little extra terminology. If you have many companies that are all selling the same product, let's say cola, so you have Coke and Pepsi, then that's perfect competition. And other companies, I mean, many firms, not just Coke and Pepsi, but all the cola companies that are out there that are selling the same product, which is cola, that's a perfect competition. What if you have many firms, but not quite, the same product, but they're similar? So that's called a monopolistic competition. That one might be something similar to like chocolate bars. There's different types, different flavors, but it's all chocolate bars, but they're similar, but they're not identical. What if you have few companies all selling the same product? That's called an oligopoly. And so that one, a good example would be like cable, your cable provider for your house, for TV or, internet. Well, forcibly, there are not very many companies that are providing that service. So like Bell and Kochko and Rogers, and there's only a few, so that's an oligopoly. And then finally, if you only have one company that sells only the one product and there's nothing similar, then that's a monopoly. And that's fairly rare, but it can occur. So once you have your market structure all figured out, you're asking, well, what do I do with it? Well, you're going to use it to see if you can better your position in the market. And so you can use this tool called the Product Market Expansion Grid, which helps you analyze growth strategies about market penetration, development, and diversification. So for medical startups, an example of this would be, a biotech startup specializing in cancer treatments. They would use this product market expansion grid to explore their options and how to move, the next steps. And they could initially focus on market penetration, and this would be by expanding their drugs usage among existing cancer patients. So you're just penetrating the market. But then they could consider, for instance, market development by introducing the drug to a greater, region. So like new geographic regions. So maybe different provinces or different countries. What they could then move on two after that is maybe new product development. So in the existing market, but then they would bring out a new market. Well, there's another option for them. And finally, they may want to just diversify, which would involve, researching the applications of their current drug into other disease areas or other applications of their existing drug. So this gives them, all of the options that's possible to strategize how their company is going to grow in the market. Let's talk a little bit about market shaping. Market shaping involves proactively influencing market conditions to achieve the desired outcomes that you want for your company and your product. For instance, in medical sciences, this might involve advocating for regulatory changes, obviously in your favor, driving public health awareness about your product or the problem that your product is addressing, or spearheading sustainable innovations. In an example where your company is focused on eco-friendly and sustainable products, you may engage in market shaping by actively promoting environmentally responsible manufacturing practices. You could also work with industry associations and policymakers to develop and promote regulations that favor sustainable medical device production, which is the field you're in, right? Eco-friendly and sustainable medical devices. That's what that's what you're working in. So this is important because essentially what you're doing is you're preparing the market, proactively to, welcome your product and your company. Another one, positive, I guess. Market shaping is in general positive, but another very positive angle to market shaping is, for instance, if you have a treatment that you're going to, or a product that's going to benefit the population, what you need to make sure is that your product is available to everybody in the population, right? And equitably, right? And that's often a problem, right? So if you, for instance, have a product that costs a lot of money, it's wonderful, the value is fantastic, but it costs a lot of money. Then you're basically saying that your product's only available to those people that can afford it. So that's not really fair, is it? So market shaping would be that your company, even though you're selling this, expensive product that's fantastic, you're looking at ways to make sure your product is available to everybody through various means. So, subsidies or government or, all of the above, to make sure that your product can be available to everybody. And so that would be another form of market shaping. Bottom line, though, the steps to market shaping, as you can see here in this slide, is the first thing you do is you observe, right? So what's up with the market? What are the market shortcomings? How does it compare, right, to what would be the perfect market? You diagnose the root causes of some of these shortcomings, some of these problems, right? You assess what your options are, right? How can you make change, right? How can you implement, what you need to do in order to be successful in the market? You then implement your changes. How are you going to engage, right, your market? You try and forecast some consequences, whether they be positive or negative. And then finally, you measure. So track how your product is doing in your market. Track, across the entire market, characteristics, right? Some outcomes that will provide you with feedback loops that will lead to adaptations, right? How do you, address all stakeholder, considerations, right? Which is a tough one, right? Because you want to make sure that all of your stakeholders are happy. Just in your value proposition, you needed to consider all possible stakeholders in the whole process of your company in order to come out with the best value proposition for everyone involved. And here it's the same idea for market shaping. You want to make sure you consider all stakeholders in the market in order for you to best shape the market for your product and your company to serve everyone in the market. How about market access? So this is pretty much the ability of your company to sell its goods and services across borders, or just simply barriers. It doesn't have to actually be geographic borders, but it can be barriers as well. So market access in healthcare and pharmaceutical generally involves navigating regulations. That's the big one. It also involves managing supplier relationships, right? So your suppliers are very important, and where, how and what you can get when and when you need it is important. This will ensure, that you're able to distribute your product within your region as best possible. Understanding this complex environment is crucial for startups to be successful in launching their products. Let's say, for example, a biopharmaceutical product. Achieving market access means not only obtaining regulatory approval, which of course everyone thinks of for their, let's say, their new drug, but also establishing relationships with healthcare providers, negotiating the pricing, the reimbursement agreements with, let's say, insurance companies, and ensuring that the drug is available and accessible to patients through, for instance, pharmacies and healthcare facilities. Because if you don't have that ability to, distribute your product where it's needed and when it's needed, that's going to be a problem. And your suppliers is, what you need in order to manufacture the drug. Let's say if you don't have, the suppliers in all regions that you're going to be operating, that's a problem as well. And so it becomes quite complex in order to satisfy all of these, challenges and pretty much barriers and facilitators that are going to permit you to operate in the various, jurisdictions. What about industries? Well, industries, especially in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology area, are both collaborative and competitive at the same time. So while companies will collaborate, they will also, of course, be in direct competition with one another. So startups have to navigate this push and pull dynamic environment to succeed in these highly potential but challenging industries. So an example would be, of course, in the pharmaceutical industry, companies often collaborate on preclinical research or clinical trials because it's so expensive and challenging to get through in order to accelerate drug development. However, when it comes to market competition, these same companies will fiercely compete for market share and, more importantly, customer loyalty. So startups need to balance this collaboration and competition strategically. Now, entering highly regulated industries like the pharmaceutical industry almost invariably poses significant challenges. And these generally include regulatory approvals, high research and development costs, and very complex intellectual property strategies. So basically protecting your intellectual property. Now, overcoming these barriers almost always demands strategic partnerships. Funding, you need to get some kind of funding, and continuous innovation. So a startup in the pharmaceutical industry with a new drug has to overcome these extensive costs, right, which are always related to, clinical trials and validation and research. And then they have to, get through regulatory hurdles and at the same time protect their intellectual property. So in order to get through this, they may actually form partnerships with more senior established pharmaceutical companies. And at the same time, they're going to have to, partner up with venture capital, funding. So that's, I guess, less of a partnering, but it's actually, raising funds to support your company. And in doing so, you're going to give away some of the equity of your company. And then finally, you have to continuously innovate during the drug development process in order to try and jump forward in the process, right, through innovation. So you've successfully addressed market access. You have a plan. So let's say you partnered with another pharmaceutical company that's, you guys are sharing, let's say, on costs and direction for testing your drugs. You have funding, which is fantastic. You have an IP strategy in place. Everything is great. Everything is moving along the way you've planned it. What you have to make sure you do is keep an eye on industry trends. So being aware of industry shifts due to customer behavior, maybe regulatory changes, new innovations in the market, and funding, so meaning the economy and what funding sources are available to you moving forward, is really important. Adaptability to changes enhances your ability as a startup to be competitive and to be sustainable in what's called an evolving market. So let's say, for example, in the field of telemedicine, which we've talked about before, your startups will need to closely monitor changing healthcare regulations, patient preferences for like virtual care or on the tele, so phone care, based on the technology that's available, right? So do you want to use your cell phone, your tablet? You have to go to a PC, or use the phone, the landline. By staying updated on these trends, startups can adapt their services and technologies to meet the shifting needs of the market. And if you do that, then you're going to survive. If you plan something and it looks fantastic and you put your head down and you just go at it, not looking at, or keeping an eye on the market, by the time you're done and you lift your head, it may be all changed and you're not going to be competitive in the market anymore. So how do you know if you're competitive in the market? Well, there's a tool called the Porter's Five Forces Framework, which assesses industry competitiveness. This analysis includes threats of new entrants, supplier and buyer power, substitute products, and rivalry among competitors. Now, understanding these forces aids startups in strategizing their market approach and positioning. So, for example, with our pharmaceutical industry, if we were to use the Porter's Five Forces, a startup would consider factors like the threat of new entrants, so meaning how easy is it for new entrants to come in and compete with you, and that's usually determined by regulatory barriers. Sometimes it's extremely high, so then the threat's lower, or it's quite low, and then the threat is higher for new entrants. The bargaining power of suppliers, which is the availability of raw materials which you need in order to manufacture your product. The bargaining power of buyers, which is the healthcare providers that are buying your product and they have preferences. The threat of substitute products, so that means something that's out there that's not your product, but can substitute for your product, for instance, generic drugs. And the intensity of the rivalry among competitors, so meaning that how many pharmaceutical companies like you exist out there that are making similar products or the same product actually, and how intense is the rivalry. I mean, if you all share the market, nicely, fairly, then you're like, oh, that's okay. I have 25% of the market. But if it's not, if it's very, very competitive and other companies are trying to take your market share away from you, then that's, makes it more difficult. And this analysis will guide your strategic decision making in terms of how to, be successful in your market. Well, that brings us to the end of lecture 3. Next up in lecture 4, we're going to talk about your business plan and your team. See you there.